Tim and Allie.
Welcome to Flyleaf Talks About Stuff, where we're doing it our way because we are unsupervised.
we got left by the other two, and so left to our own devices, this is the way we're going to try it today.
This is the best we can do. It feels like a talk show.
It feels awkward because I have to talk to you like this, and then like this, and then like this, and camera 2, camera 1. But we'll get there because it's kind of fun, and I don't know, it may work, right? Mm-hmm. It may work.
I was doing now look at your man, now back to me. Now look at your man, now back to me. Like the old Spice commercials.
Oh my dear, so Stephanie is on vacation and Kimberly is in session and she's tied up, so it's just the two of us, and we're going to do our best to present a topic for you. How's that?
I think
if this format is something that makes you cringe and it's not something that you're happy with, let us know and we won't do it again. Or we could do more of it. Like, who knows?
Or if you love it and you're tickled pink with this like talk show setup, let us know that too.
Yeah, we can make that happen, right? Yeah. All right. So what are we talking about today?
We're talking about imposter syndrome, which is very interesting that we're talking about this because imposter syndrome is a lot of things, and Kim took some great notes on stuff that she's been reading. But it's funny that recording it this way, I feel so awkward.
I do too.
I don't know that this is necessarily kicking up imposter syndrome for me, which is something that I sometimes struggle with, but it's kicking up like, oh my God, what are they going to think about me?
Yeah, and it's kicking up the like, oh, this is kind of like strange, but I don't know, maybe it works. We'll see. Kind of feels like a newscast, right?
For sure.
Right, well, maybe if we look at it like that, we'll be good.
Yeah.
Okay, so imposter syndrome, what is imposter syndrome?
You're going to tell us? Or
I am.
Do you want me to give my definition?
Yes, I would like your definition.
Academic or lived experience?
Academic.
Okay, academic definition of it is to feel like a fraud, to feel not good enough, to feel like if somebody were to just scratch the surface, they're going to figure you out, that you're not who you were presenting to be.
Yeah. So the various definitions that I found range from everything from feeling like any successes that you have are only due to luck, not because of your ability. Maybe it's because I knew somebody or somebody really liked me and gave me the opportunity that I have, but it wasn't because of who I am innately as a person. And then the other one I have is that somebody who can't internalize their own successes, which is essentially the same thing.
Right.
That you're not able to give yourself credit for the things that you do well, although you are able to give yourself responsibility for the things you don't do well.
So if I do well, it's not because of anything I did, but if I failed, it's my fault.
Exactly.
Got it. Yeah.
So, yeah. And I think a lot of people can relate to that.
For sure. I mean, the stat that you had found that you had read to me was 70% of people, that's 70% of people, cross occupation,
cross genders, cross ages, cross everything, struggle at some point
right,
with imposter syndrome. And for some people, it's paralyzing. For some people, it means I'm only going to apply for jobs that I know how to do really well already, or if it's I don't want to learn new things because if I show that I don't know something, I'm showing incompetence.
Right.
So I only do the things I can do well, forgetting the fact that you have to learn those things. And it can be paralyzing for some people. It can prevent them from being their full self and living their full life and achieving their full potentials.
Right. Because imposter syndrome is about how you view yourself rather than how others view you, right?
Right, or what was your definition of how you view imposter syndrome?
Oh, like myself?
Yeah.
Okay, so my own definition, spilling the tea, talking about myself, is I know my stuff, but I get nervous that you don't think I know my stuff, and therefore I feel like a fraud because of how I worry I'm being perceived by you.
Right.
That's my own working definition.
Yeah.
And that one doesn't feel good.
It doesn't feel good. None of it feels good. We all want to be able to take credit for the things that we do well.
Right.
Another way that imposter syndrome shows up is in people who are perfectionists, and they don't have the fortitude to hold space inside of themselves for things that they don't do well, or that they don't not just succeed in, but like succeed grandly in. And small failures will devastate them because for them that's showing themselves and others that they aren't as smart as they thought, or as good as they thought, or as whatever as they thought they were. And that can be another thing that, and honestly, perfectionism comes from a place of insecurity as a child.
Yeah. I wonder how that would show up in a little person. Like because I'm all for doing repair work in a child so that way they don't have to grow up continuing with a negative cognition or a negative script or a negative narrative, whatever. So I wonder, in any family, what might this look like? How could we, as parents, how could we, as influencers for children, if we're not a parent, what could we do that would like recognize that this would planting a seed here that shouldn't be?
Well, I think one of the biggest things is celebrating attempts as well as celebrating people who succeed. And it doesn't mean everybody gets a participation trophy. That's not where I'm going with that.
Right.
But what I am saying is that if my child has done their best, and I've watched them do their best, and they get to be on the test, I'm going to celebrate that they did the best that they could possibly do. And that the best that we can possibly do isn't always going to be an A.
Right.
There are places, you know your kids. You know if they're slacking because they're really, even if they didn't do the work or if they didn't study or whatever. But for the most part, it's making sure that we not only celebrate those hard efforts and successes, but that we don't dwell on the times they don't succeed.
Right.
And sometimes what we hear from kids is, I always get punished for bad grades, but they never give me credit for good grades because they expect the credit for good grades.
Right. And going back to what you said, the definition of imposter syndrome, how that shows up is if I did anything bad, it's my fault. But if I did anything good, it was luck, it was
the expectation.
The expectation was met.
Yeah.
So that would be something really good for, like, if you have children and you're watching this and you recognize yourself as one of the 70% of people who struggle with imposter syndrome as an adult, maybe consider how that seed was planted in childhood and what we can do now to be different adult people for our little people.
Right, and that's all we ever want to do is be better adult people than maybe sometimes that we had. We always want our kids to have it a little bit better than what we had.
Right.
We don't want them to struggle the way that we did. Right. Another thing that they talk about is that people with imposter syndrome don't ask for help. So in class, they're not going to raise their hand. They're going to pretend like they already have the answer. Or at work, they're going to be the person who's going to go home and they're going to try to figure out how to do the thing instead of just simply asking for somebody next to them how to do something that they were asked to do. It would be easier that way. But it's not because they have their ego in the game. It's because they have their sense of competence in the game, which is, I think, a bit different than ego.
Right.
And they don't want to be seen as incompetent and not knowing. And so, or found out.
Either by others or by themselves. You know, like, I don't want to shine that spotlight of my own insecurity on myself.
Right.
I'm just going to kind of put the blinders on and pretend.
Yeah, and that goes on to the next thing about working really hard to prove you're not an imposter. So, if my boss tells me that I have to, I'm not going to, okay, y'all are going to do this about me. I'm not going to do math. I'm not going to do the computer spreadsheets and all that kind of thing. It's not my wheelhouse. It's not like because I can't, I guess, but I just never wanted to and never cared. And in this profession, I don't really need to know a lot of math and spreadsheets. So if somebody were to tell me to do something, I've even gone to Allie because I've had to do them. And I go, okay, how do you do this? And they show me how, because I know that that's not an area I have a lot of knowledge about. But if I had imposter syndrome, what I might do is instead of saying, I don't know how to do this, but show me how, I might go home and go on a tutorial or go on YouTube or spend time trying to figure out how to do it so that when I come to work the next day, it's all done beautifully and perfectly, but it took me half the night to do it as opposed to just asking for help.
Right. Or in the clinical world where we work, it might be somebody who's interested in something, and instead of asking a colleague or getting consultation about it, like a one-time thing, they're going to find the most expensive training, they're going to do the training, and then they're going to be an expert in it, not necessarily because they were passionate about it or wanted to implement it in their practice. It was because they had to take it to the end. Yeah.
So and Allie shared with you guys how she kind of spilled her tea about how she sees imposter syndrome in her life. Yeah. And I'll share with you my biggest struggle that I ever had with imposter syndrome in my life was when I was in graduate school, because I always thought I was a mediocre student. And not that I ever thought I was a stupid person, but I just always thought as a student, I was mediocre. Like, I just kind of did what I had to do, and I'd get C's, maybe D's, and get on by. And when I got into graduate school, I got straight A's. I had really good grades. I have never experienced grades like that in my life. And I was really afraid because I thought for a long time that the only reason I got good grades was because the professors really liked me because I got along with them.
Right.
And I thought that's why they gave me good grades, not because the things I was writing were really good or the research I was doing was good or the analytical thinking was good. I thought it was just simply because they liked me. I actually went to the counseling center at my graduate school to go, okay, you got to help me work through this stuff because I'm starting to have a panic attack every time I have a test that if I don't get an A on it, they're going to figure out I'm not smart. And it was really a hard struggle. And that's probably the time that really held me back and prevented me from really fully experiencing some joy in my life. But other than that, I think maybe we experience it in small ways.
In small ways. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Right. Right. I was on the other end of that. Like you in grad school, like I was a BC student in high school. College, I started making my A's because I figured out my learning style, finally. And then in grad school, I made straight A's with the exception of one class, marriage and family, the counseling class, which is why I work with couples.
We don't do couples.
Still wounded by that. No, Stephanie and Kimberly are so masterful, like I'm not going to go do that.
We should do it. We should do a talk about why we don't work with
Why
couples.
we don't work with couples. Next time we're alone together, you can find out why we're not the ones for you.
But we have two colleagues who are.
They're brilliant. But I was so worried that like other people would perceive me as not knowing my stuff, because when I speak, I'm not necessarily the most eloquent, concise thought speaker. But if you give me a paper and pen, I will write you exactly what I need to say, because that's how I process.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And I'm kind of the opposite. I kind of babble, I think, and sometimes I talk in circles and I'll look at somebody and go, did I just confuse you more than I helped you? But when I'm writing, I'm like, I write really well.
Right.
And write very clearly and write well.
But that could be enough to trigger that sense of, for somebody, that I'm an imposter, that if you really knew about me more or knew about my skills or my deficits, that like you would do me differently and one down me, you know?
Yeah. True. And we have this, well, we did a talk a few weeks ago, maybe a month or so ago, about negative cognitions and positive cognitions and how they impact our lives. And one of the ways to overcome imposter syndrome is to look at those negative and positive cognitions. How are those positive cognitions helping you? Those things like, I can do this, I can relate to people, whatever it is. What is it that's that positive thing you're telling yourself that's bringing you this amazing luck? Right. And how can we kind of tweak that? And then what is that negative thought that's stopping you? That negative of I'm not good enough, or I have to prove this, or I'll never be good enough, or because of this, I'm not going to be good enough, or someone will abandon me if I didn't do this right. Because it isn't always about school and work. This shows up in parenting,
right,
in relationships, those kinds of things. And so
it doesn't even show up in childhood. So like, whenever we do exploration of positive and negative cognition, sometimes we go back with like, when was the first time you remember hearing this script? Negative cognition. Does this feel really old? Is this new and unfamiliar? I like to call them ants, or automatic negative thoughts. So let's get out our magnifying glass and go hunt for them ants, burn them up in the sun.
And this is why Allie works well with children.
It's a little cheesy, but
but it works, right?
It works,
It works.
Yeah, because sometimes if you think about like the small little critter of an ant, it's not just one usually that you find in a place. There's so many, like if you see one, there's usually others. So sometimes you find the queen first, sometimes you don't.
Right. And a good example, to go with our beautiful analogy, are like fire ants. If you're familiar with fire ants, one fire ant will bite, yep, and it will sting. But when they all get together, they will tear you up.
Oh my God.
And they're so tiny, but they're just like little peppers of pain all over your body if you get into a fire ant hill. So
I stepped on a red ant pile in high school. I had like 100 bites on my right foot. I got a fever. It was really bad. So I know what she's talking about, and it's nasty. It's hard, actually. But like it's hot, it gets red. It's like in little bites. Not showing you all that. I'll show you.
So I think the biggest thing is to look at those thoughts and look at what's stopping you from moving forward. And most people don't come into counseling for imposter syndrome, honestly, especially 70%. I mean, most of us experience it at different times in our lives, and most of us, because of our resilience and because of our life and because of things going on, we're able to move through those and we're able to be just fine, just like any other struggle in our lives. But when it becomes something that's stopping you from being the best person that you know that you can be, or being your authentic true self, then that's something we probably can help with, or that you probably need to talk with somebody about, because it comes from somewhere. These things don't just develop from the air. They come from somewhere. And generally what we find here is that some small t or little t kind of a trauma and development of the sense of self as a child that just kind of brings this.
Right. It's worth looking at. I would say that when I have seen it, because I work with so many adolescents, it's like fear of getting into college and being perceived by the admissions board as being worthy enough to be in that institution.
Yeah.
And that, like, I'm not even gonna apply to my dream school because of an XYZ. Or I'm not even gonna apply to this job because of XYZ. And it's what's keeping them stuck and not forward progressing even though they really want to.
I think too, if you look at that failure to launch syndrome that comes up, I think there's some of that in there too. Sometimes at the end of every school year in college, it never fails that I have a handful of college students in my office, probably sometime in February, because they're getting ready to graduate and they've done so well in school and they've been very academically focused and they've really worked hard and they've gotten the grades they need and they're getting ready to graduate. Now they got to go to work. And the fear is, can I apply this stuff? Do I have it to apply to actually do the things I've studied so long for? And so for many of them, they start to fail. Some of them will quit or they'll fail out so that they can add a semester or they'll start to delay graduation because they're afraid of that. And I think a big part of that is just identifying yourself as I am an A student, but am I a person who can make my way through the world? It's looking at that and feeling like if I'm not this, then what am I? And then working through those negative thoughts and expectations. And for many, it has to go back to that perfectionist and expert part.
Right.
So, yeah.
And re-scripting what's a fair expectation of yourself. You know, like my 18-year-olds graduating high school who are kind of in that like same kind of tumultuous place, who are so expected by so many people to have their life planned out at 18. I'm like, oh, my heart breaks. You are 18.
Not many 18, and the 18-year-olds that are kind of thrust out there at 18 didn't do it with a plan.
They did
very few of them actually did it with a plan. A lot of them just hit the ground and just kind of learned to cope and rebuild and make their way through life.
Sure, or they did it with like a temporary plan. Like, this is gonna work for me for like this amount of time, you know, and then I'm gonna reevaluate, and reassess, or we'll see what happens.
Yeah. So anyway, that's the kind of the crux of imposter syndrome. Final thoughts?
But it sucks. I find myself in that 70% every once in a while. I've come to Kim and we've processed it with brain spotting before. So I can speak from experience on the other side of the couch, how quickly it can resolve if you're willing to do the hard work. So, you know, where do you want to be? If you're more comfortable being in a stuck place because you're scared of working through something, I would encourage you to reconsider, because you're not an imposter. You're a beautiful version of yourself, and you are good enough, and you're worthy. Don't hurt any longer than you have to.
Yeah. And I guess my final thoughts are that this stuff shows up across the board. So it can show up, like I said, work and home. It can show up in your ability to be a partner or a parent or even a friend. It can show up in the sport that you play. It can show up in so many things. I think imposter syndrome and fear of failure gets people into the slumps, right?
Yeah.
So that was one of the things we talked about in brain spotting.
Yes.
Yeah, where they can't do anymore what they could do because they're so afraid of not being able to that they can't.
Right.
So it shows up in so many different ways. But if you can recognize that what that is happening to you, then you can get some help pretty quickly for it. If it lasts, if it doesn't last, then it's part of life, right? So many things that everybody says, go to therapy for, things that you're going to work out anyway. But if it's something that's causing you to get stuck in your forward progression of your life, then you really do need to look at that.
For sure. Like, if you can't ever validate internally if a good thing happened to you because you worked for it.
Right.
You know what I mean? But it wasn't luck. It wasn't like magic voodoo.
Yeah.
That you put the effort and energy into this. That, you know, if you can't get to that place, that feels pretty sucky.
Well, even if it is right place at right time, because the four of us got together at the right place at the right time. I mean, us opening this practice was right place at right time. There's so many things that timing makes it important, but what you do after that is entirely up to you. You know, the universe can only provide you right place and right time so often, but if you do nothing with it, then it isn't any good. So you do have to offer yourself some credit for your successes in your life. Of course, be responsible for the things that don't go well, but there's a balance. You have to be able to take credit for what you do well, and it's not being arrogant.
Yeah, you should be able to celebrate successes.
Absolutely.
And to rebound from failures and learn from them and not internalize it necessarily.
And we have so many final thoughts.
I know.
So
Part two, stay tuned.
Part two of the final thoughts. So, but another thought is if you don't have the fortitude to sit and not doing something well, you're never going to be able to do it well. So you have to be able to look at where you need to back up and shift gears and redo something or try it in a different way. Or just like even when we're talking about school, I didn't get my groove in studying until later in life, and neither did you, right?
Yeah.
And so sometimes it isn't about your inability to do something, it's about learning how to do it within your abilities that make your success. So,
Yep.
All right. How can they find us?
Find us
Wait.
on. Ow.
Did you pull something?
I took my brace off. I wanted to have two hands for a minute. You can find us on Facebook by searching for Flyleaf Counseling. Find us on the internet, flyleafcounseling.com. On Instagram, Flyleaf_counseling, and then on YouTube by searching for Flyleaf Counseling in the search bar.
All right. Well, thank you so much. Let us know what you think of this format. If it was kind of silly for you, then that's fine. It's kind of goofy for us too. But it was fun though. I would do it again.
I would totally do it again.
Totally. I'm getting used to this.
If we had to figure out how to squeeze in Kim and Kimberly, or Kim and Stephanie, it would be like two little heads by our knees. I don't know. Where would they sit?
We would have two screens instead of one, so they could be in one office and we could be in another office. Oh, we could do this, you guys. We could do this.
We can make this happen.
Mhm.
You're resilient. We are.
All of the brains together to make one good idea. All right. So you guys have a good week, and we will see you next week. And bye.